This is Joanne Coy, large R Western dressage judge, L graduate with USDF, bronze medalist, many, many years of riding experience. And one of my greatest pleasures is sitting in the judge's booth and watching riders show their lovely horses to us as judges. We are always excited about that and being instrumental in helping, in whatever way we can for people to better the lives of their horses and enjoy the relationship that they have with their horse. So that, I think that when they show their horse to the judges, it gives us a chance to give you some tips and tricks of the trade through our evaluations, and just basically give you feedback so that you can continue on in your training and go on up through the levels. The levels are designed so that you can train your horse and get a very cooperative horse in the process. And I think showing does a big, gives you a big boost in that process. So hopefully you'll enjoy our discussion. And this is a very informal presentation. Please interrupt. Mary will tell me when there's a question or a comment, and please interact and interrupt if you wish. I've got some information that I'm going to share with you, just kind of give us a springboard for discussion, and I'm definitely interested in your questions that you might have about, hey, how come the judge did that? Or why does the judge score me this way? That kind of thing. It shouldn't be a mystery to you. So, okay.
There we go. Sorry, Joanne.
Okay. So just sharing with you tips about really what matters when you're in the dressage ring, whether it's English dressage or Western dressage. And since this is presented by WDAMI, a little bit more emphasis on the Western dressage tests and so on. But certainly English dressage is, as pertinent in this presentation as the Western. So go ahead, Mary.
Okay.
There you go. So do we have the one that says criteria plus, or is that the next one, Mary?
Let me see.
Basics plus criteria.
I think, whoops, that's the next one.
Okay, all right. So going back to the one you just had is fine. Back up one, Mary.
Okay.
Oh gosh. Okay, we'll have to mute somebody.
Yeah. Bonnie, can you mute? Thank you.
Okay, so it's really important to remember that. Oops, still got another.
Yeah. It's
there we go. Okay. When we give you a score, when judges put a score down on your test, there is a method to the madness. The scoring all translates into words. And I'm also the chair of the Judge Education Committee for Western Dressage. So I'm often telling judges that if your mind says, oh, that was very good, well, then that would be a 9. If in your head as a judge, you say, not sure that was great, but he did it. Well, that might be a marginal. So that would be a 5. What we really don't like to see as in our judge education programs is if someone as a judge gives a score of, let's say, an 8, but made some comments that indicated that the movement didn't look good at all. Well, that's conflicting. Or if they score a movement a 6, and then their comment is fluid with good energy, well, if it's good, then it should be getting an 8. And, same with if the comment is counterbent, hollow in transition, broke gait, that too does not deserve a score of a 6. So we really emphasize when we're talking about judges in training and judges that are reviewing, and we always review, that your score should match your words. Your words should match your score. Okay, so how do we come up with a score? That's in the next slide, Mary.
Okay, before we move on, I do have a question in the chat if you want to take it now.
Yeah, go ahead, sure.
So this is from Kristen. It says, so I have the first question. So many people ask what the difference is between traditional and Western. So can you talk about what are maybe the 3 major differences?
Between Western dressage and classical dressage?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So in Western dressage, we are hopeful that our horses will become athletes that may translate into a Western realm, because it is Western dressage. But basically, whether it's Western dressage or English dressage, dressage is schooling your horse. The word dressage comes from the French word dresse, which means to train or school. So all of our horses, whether it be a classical or Western, are looking to improve their athleticism and improve the relationship between the horse and the rider. Western dressage horses are not necessarily expected to be above the ground in their movements. We're not looking for big warm blood gaits, although we wouldn't penalize that if we saw it. But basically, our Western horses are horses that are going to be functional in a lot of different Western realms and in just general pleasure riding. And as they go through the training process, they will become more athletic, and their collection will allow them to engage the hindquarters, and or hindquarters engaged will allow them to be more collected and a little bit more up in the withers and in the front end, and lighter. And of course, we're always working toward harmony, as is classical dressage. So there is no Olympic goal for a Western dressage horse, but we do have levels of achievement. So a Western dressage horse can exhibit lots of very athletic movements, much as in classical dressage. So there's a difference. We have in Western dressage, we have our world show welcomes any breed. At our last Western dressage show, I think we had something in the neighborhood of 50 different breeds of horses competing. So it's a very, very popular sport. A lot of people are going to Western dressage so that they can utilize their horses that they happen to have that are just horses that may have been family pets, or a 4-H horse that's been retired. The young person has gone off to college, and mom says, you know what, I think I'd like to do that. So we're pretty proud of the fact that all horses are welcome in the venue of Western dressage.
Perfect.
Does that
Thank
kind of
you.
answer your question?
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. That was
Yep,
great.
sure.
All right, here's your next slide.
So the methodology that we use as a judge is not random in any way. Okay, so we ascribe to this formula, and this is the same formula you'll see in classical dressage as well. The B stands for basics, so we're always looking for the basics. Now, I know if you participated in Sue Hughes' presentation, that was our first presentation we put on. I know she talked about the training wheel. So in Western dressage, we literally did recreate the wheel. Instead of using the pyramid of training, we talk about the training wheel, because in our discussion several years ago, we decided that the pyramid lends itself to reaching the top of the pyramid as the ultimate goal, and that would be collection, which we don't argue with, but it did look like it was linear, that you had to have the lower levels before you could get to the higher levels. And in our train of thought, or wheel of thought, we thought about it being more of a circular thing, that all of the elements, the basics, contribute to lightness and throughness and harmony. And I think we have a slide coming up with the training wheel, but I just want to mention, so we do in the basics, we talk about the training wheel or pyramid, and then the C stands for criteria. So in every movement, every part of a dressage test, there's a criteria. There's something that the horse has to be doing, if it's a shoulder in or a leg yield or whatever. So the criteria of the exercise, in other words, it has to be recognizable to the judge. Is that a shoulder in, or I'm not real sure, is that a leg yield? So the criteria of the movement is important. So we take those two things and go back one yet,
Yep,
Mary?
sorry.
We take those two things, and then we also think about plus or minus the modifier. And a modifier is a little incident that might have occurred. It might be a slight spook, or the horse's the circle is slightly large. In order, as long as the largest of the circle, I'm talking about a tiny bit large, doesn't make the movement easier for the rider. But if it's just a little bit of a bubble or tiny bit of an egg shape or whatnot, that might be a modifier. We consider all three of those things, and then we come up with a score. And that's how we get our score, whether it's English dressage, Western dressage, it doesn't matter. We all follow this plan. Okay. Pardon my dog in the background who wants attention. We can go to the next one.
Yeah, so Joanne, I do have a comment in
Yep.
the chat. It's not a question, but it just is from Tracy, and she says she loves the wheel because it means to recreate every step and that all are connected.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
very
think
good.
that's a
Thank
great
you. Yes.
observation.
And if you have a chance to look at Sue Hughes' booklet, she created a kind of a spoke by spoke explanation of the wheel. And we think it's pretty cool that the wheel looks like a wagon wheel. It's kind of westerny. And anyway, Sue has a booklet. And if you haven't seen it, you can email her at some point in time, Sue Hughes, and she will, for a nominal, very nominal fee, send you this booklet. And it's really, really, really good. So we're very happy to have that as part of our training. Okay, on to the next one.
Oh, so you asked me to bring up basic too. I'm not sure. Oh, this is basic one. I'm not
It
sure we
doesn't
can
matter.
even see it
No,
well.
it's fine. It's
Okay.
fine. That's fine. You don't have to really read this test, but I want you to just look at it. If there's anyone here that's never really look closely at the method of madness that we have in every test. So understand that the tests are written so that horses can develop in their training, and riders can develop. We have people who are showing horses, whether it be online or in person, from all over the world, and some of them don't have access to trainers or help. And online showing has opened up quite a few opportunities for people that, as I say, are in maybe remote areas and don't have access to anyone that can help them, and they can send in their rides, their videos of their rides, and someone can give them feedback and give them ideas of how they can improve. So our tests are written so that we can help the horse become more athletic, more cooperative, lighter, more through, and so on, becoming just a better athlete, which contributes to the horse's longevity. So, in my mind, we're saving lives. These horses are becoming functionally involved with their owners, and just more useful. But anyway, the test itself is pretty thorough. The top of the test has the purpose of that particular level, and you can see test confirm, and then it goes on to what's going on in that level. And in basic level, for example, the purpose is to have the horse move freely, with suppleness, forward in a clear and steady rhythm, accepting light contact with the bit, demonstrating greater understanding of the aids and calm acceptance of the bridle, greater emphasis placed on relaxation, willing cooperation, harmony, rideability, and pure gaits, and the horse is beginning to develop more impulsion and balance. So that kind of just gives you an idea of what do I need to show the judge in this level. And then for every single movement, as you can see, the directives really pretty much spell it out as to what you need to show the judge in that particular movement. And so studying the test is a huge tool for the rider, and not necessarily practicing the test over and over again, but knowing what each movement is supposed to be showing and why it's beneficial. Obviously, when you see that it's a coefficient of 2, there's more value placed on that particular movement, because without it, the horse isn't going to reach the goals for that particular level, or, for, like in this case, basic level. Okay, we can go to the next. Are there any questions on that?
Joan, I just have a question myself.
Yeah.
So how do you decide which movements are worth the coefficient of 2?
So in the basic level, for example, here, the movements that are a coefficient are the circle, okay, a 20-meter circle, which helps the rider and horse to develop lateral balance. The free walk demonstrates it's also a coefficient of 2. The free walk demonstrates that the horse is willing to stay connected to the rider. Connection is everything, reaching out for the contact. When you release the reins, the horse is seeking you. And so that's really, really important at the lower levels, because in some particular types of riding, for example, if you throw the reins away, the horse is like, I am not reaching out for that. He told me to keep my head here and I'm not moving. Well, there's no contact then. There's just, habit of staying in a quote frame, or in other venues, it might be called a headset, which is to us not a great word. So free walk demonstrates the horse's ability to look, seek for, and show that they're interested in staying connected to the rider. And then again, the circle to the right in this particular test is a coefficient of 2, because again, you're showing lateral balance, longitudinal balance, and by the way, the rider's ability to make a figure approximately 20 meters. So that's a part of it too. Accuracy of the test.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
Very
sure.
helpful. Thank you.
Yep.
This is just the back of the test. If
Right.
you...
So as the judge is completing the test, when we judge a ride, we dictate to the scribe all the scores that are on the front of the test, and also the comments. And it is a kind of a rule for all judges. And if you come across judges that don't do this, you probably should mention it to someone of higher authority. But it is a rule that if your score is a 6.5 or lower, the judge should make a comment, okay? Because you shouldn't be, in my opinion, and this is, pretty common thought, you shouldn't be paying for a class in which your feedback is simply a score, and then maybe, smiley face. That's not good. So, make sure that when you do get your test, if the scores aren't commented on for 6.5 or lower, you might want to mention that to management. Gee, I wish the judge had mentioned what my problem was, because as a judge, we want to let you know why we're taking points away. Why isn't it a 9? Why isn't it a 10? A 10 is excellent. It's not perfect. A 9 is very good. And there shouldn't be a corridor of scoring that a judge has to stay within and not go any higher and not go any lower. We like to use the whole gamut of points for whatever the horse is doing, and not shortchange the rider just because we want to stay within, we can't go higher than a 6.5 or whatever. We don't do that. So anyway, the collective remarks are also very valuable for the rider to see. The overall remarks at the end of the test kind of summarize what the judge saw. Remember, this shouldn't be a riding lesson from the judge. It should just be a feedback on what they saw. And then it's our job as judges to give you that feedback and remark on what some of the basics are that might have been missing, what might have been improved upon, but not necessarily a riding lesson. We just don't have time, but we do want to make sure that we give you feedback, especially on harmony. Harmony is like the beacon that we're all riding toward. Without it, we don't have much. So, yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about what you're looking at when you're looking for harmony? I know it's like in our group, it's really exciting when you get a great harmony score. And sometimes I think that's more exciting to me than maybe some of the other comments. So what are you looking for when you look for harmony?
Yeah, harmony is like the judges, and the words are pretty clear. The horse accepts the aids and influence of the rider with attention, relaxation, and confidence, and demonstrates a willing partnership between horse and rider, resulting in a free-flowing performance. And that is the same wording that's used throughout all the levels, okay? So as a judge, when I see a team completing the criteria of the test and no one looks miserable, okay, then they're going toward a 7 in harmony, or a 6.5 at least. And some things that take away from a good harmony score might be a ringing tail, an open mouth. Although um, an open mouth is not a good thing, but sometimes horses have habits. And so if I see something going on in the mouth and I don't see tension anywhere else in the horse's body, I'm not going to get too bogged down on a slightly open mouth. Now, I mean, if the tongue's hanging out and the horse is grinding its teeth and so on, that is usually an indication of anxiety or tension. But if the rest of the body is free flowing and the shoulders are swinging and the hindquarters are engaged, then those other things. So we kind of can see the big picture of harmony pretty easily. And to get a good harmony score, pat yourself on the back, because that's really quite an accomplishment. In fact, at the World Show, anyone who gets an 8 in harmony, I'm pretty sure it was this way last year too. Anyone who gets an 8 or higher in harmony can put their name in a drawing, and then we have a saddle that we give away for the harmony award. So that's pretty cool at the Western Dressage World Show. We
I
really
love
do
that.
value harmony.
So back to Kristen's original question, is harmony a different than traditional? Does traditional
No,
harmony?
in English dressage or classical dressage, traditional, whatever you want to call it, harmony is a beacon that everyone works toward as well. It's not
Okay.
overlooked. Um, the things that you see sometimes that you kind of recoil at in an English dressage show, maybe a clamped down jaw with a very, very tight flash noseband. See, we don't allow that in Western dressage. But that would take away from the harmony score. We can't fudge harmony, in any venue, whether it's English or Western. If the horse is ringing its tail, I don't care what saddle it has on. It's showing that it's not very content, and there's not a great harmonious relationship happening there. So, yeah.
Great. All right, we're gonna move on then.
Harmony isn't on the. Let me get my book. We don't have a separate harmony score in English dressage. However, we do have submission. Okay, so submission does include harmony. It says willing cooperation, harmony, attention and confidence, accepting of the bit and aids, straightness, lightness of the forehand, ease of the movements. So, in fact, I think in the FEI test, they changed the word submission. There's been discussion about some people not liking the word submission. So yeah.
That's good. Thank you, Joanne.
Yep. Okay, so I think I already mentioned this. When you look at the test, it's very clearly stated what is the purpose of this test. And I read through earlier the purpose for basic. It's spelled out in that little box at the top of the test. And every movement has a directive. And if you read the directive, you can see, well, what is it I really ought to be working on in this particular movement? So I really feel that the tests themselves are great study guides for anyone who's riding, not just what's in the left-hand column, the movement, like A to X, enter working jog, halt through the walk, salute, proceed, working jog. A lot of riders will just concentrate on that, but go over to the next column and read the directive. I'm sure if you work with a coach or a trainer, they do. But as a rider, also make sure you're looking at that, because that's what we're looking for as judges. Okay. So here's the wheel. We even made it in a kind of a colorful arrangement. I mean, if you go clockwise, rhythm, every horse has to have rhythm. If you don't have purity of gaits. And see, the cool thing about Western dressage is we are welcoming, as I said, all breeds. Okay. Like right now I'm giving lessons with a gal who has a gaited mule. Okay. So we have gaited horses showing in Western dressage. We have mules, we have mammoth jacks, we have, well, you name it. I mean, there's 45 to 50 different breeds at a horse show. I didn't even know there were that many, but that's what we've got. Paso Finos and whatever. So one thing we as judges have to make sure we see in the ring is rhythm, purity of gait. Okay, now we have thrown some of our English dressage judges who have come over to Western dressage for a loop because they're suddenly judging gaited horses. And one of the big components that I teach at the dressage judging seminar for Western dressage is how to judge gaited horses. Well, it's not our job as judges to know what kind of gaited horse it is. The only thing we look at is it rhythmic? Does the rhythm stay the same when the horse is doing what we call saddle gait? And the saddle gait could be a Missouri Foxtrot, it could be a Rocky Mountain running walk, it could be a Tennessee Walker running walk, it could be whatever. But is it rhythmic? So when we see it coming down the center line in that saddle gait, do we see a sequence of footfalls that throughout the test, whenever it does its saddle gait, stays the same? Okay. When we watch a horse trot, is the trot pure? Or when we watch it jog, is it pure? Does it have regularity? Is the tempo the same? Okay. So without rhythm, you don't have much. Of course, then we're looking at suppleness um, and you can read this, I know yourself. The connection, that's why there's a free walk, so we can see, is the horse connected? Is it looking for contact from the rider? Impulsion, is the engine working? Is it willing to move forward with energy? Straightness, straightness is critical. Now, since now we have it in a circular shape, none of these are more important than the other. Okay. So, I mean, I always tell gaited horse people, I want to make t-shirts that say, if he ain't straight, he won't gait. So without straightness, gaited horses can't gait. And then every horse, we're asking for, to some degree, a little bit of collection. It's not something we reserve for third level horses, although we're not asking third or training or intro or basic horses to be, quote, collected. But there is some expectation that the weight goes onto the hindquarters and the horse lightens the front end. So, some semblance of collection happens even at the lower levels. So, and you put all those things together and you've got lightness and throughness in harmony. So that's why we literally recreated the wheel here. So any questions about that? Okay, onward. So what we're really looking for, harmony, that's the beacon. Without it, we're not happy. If the horse isn't happy and doesn't appear to be content with the aids that the rider's giving him or her, that shows. And so, we're looking for rhythm and regularity. As I just said, we're looking for balance, longitudinal and lateral balance, and the rider's knowledge of the basics. I don't think you can spend too much time studying or referring to, and I have a copy of the training pyramid, and we'll soon have a giant copy of the wheel in my riding arena when I'm working with students. I refer to it all the time. What did you do today? What basics did we work on today? What did we have problems with? So, and that's a good mental review for anybody who's riding their horse and doesn't have any coaching available or another set of eyes. What did I miss today of the basics? And so that's really, really critical. So those are the things we're looking for. When a person judges, we have to multitask. If you've ever scribed for a judge, you know that. There's a lot going on. In the 7 minutes that it takes you to ride your test, or 5 minutes, or whatever it is, we have lots of things to think about. But we do it often enough that it's, second nature to us to know what to look for. I personally don't memorize the tests. I mean, no, I can't tell you what's in third level test two. What are all the movements in third level test two? Okay, but I know how to look at what's on the test. I know how to keep my eyes on the rider, and the judges can mentally remember, or if not, jot something down. There's all kinds of tricks of the trade that we do so that we can at least give you feedback for what went well and what you might need to work on, because that's what we're there for. That's what we get paid for. So, yeah. Is there another slide? Okay. So the point of the collective remarks, yes. The gates were asked to comment on the gates, because what we're looking for in the gait score is freedom, the horse's freedom of movement and the regularity of the gaits. Okay. Impulsion, that's where we talk about whether or not the horse has the desire to move forward while being supple and with a steady tempo. Tempo means miles per hour, right? Tempo, speed. So, not fast, slow, but pretty much regular. We're also asked to comment on the rider's position, seat, and hands. If we see a rider tipping off to the left or the right, we'll make a comment on that. And these are things that, again, if someone doesn't have somebody coaching them, they might not know. Gee, I didn't know I was leaning to the left. But in that particular test, maybe you don't do it all the time, but you might have in that test. Riders' correct and effective use of the aids. Here's where, sorry, there's a misspelling there. Here's where we comment on the horse's responsiveness. We're looking for the connection, the accuracy of the test, effectiveness of your aids, and whether or not you completed the required movements. And then, of course, the harmony is how do you work as a team? Is it a willing partnership for a free-flowing performance? They're all scored, 10 points on each. There's no coefficient on that. So that's how we do the collectives. And then the final remark is something that I think is very important for judges to add at the end. Usually we try to think of something that you might want to work on and something that we thought was rather impressive and we were pleased to see in your test. So, yeah. And again, further remarks, that's where we give you a summary of the things that need attention. And all we see, remember, when we judge a test, all we see is that horse performing in that 5 to 7 minute window. You might have had a great warm up. We don't see that. You might have had some things happen. I remember one show, well, it was the World Show I was judging, and the girl had a really difficult time with her horse. He was terrified and wanted to leave, and she managed to get him through the test. It was very difficult. Her scores were fairly low. But in the further remarks, and I know this story because I know the trainer that she worked with, and the trainer told me this. She called the trainer after the test and was crying and said, "Oh, it was horrible. He was running out. He almost left the arena." And this is at the World Show, so it was a big deal. And the trainer says, "Well, don't worry about it. It'll be fine." And she was devastated. And then when she got her test back, the further remark said, "I really admire your tenacity in keeping, I judged her test. I really admire your tenacity in keeping your horse in the ring and not giving up. Your confidence spilled over to him and he got through the test. Congratulations." And then she called her trainer back again and said, "Oh my God, look at this comment." So this is our chance as a judge to say, you know what, we're human too. Here's some things that went well. Here's some things you could work on, but don't worry about it. It's a 5 to 7 minute window, and things sometimes go wrong.
Joanne, I have a story to that comment.
Yeah.
So I wrote a test in front of Sue Hughes, and I adore her, and my horse was acting up, and so I got the score wasn't that great, but the harmony comment she wrote, "Not today," and I just started laughing because I go,
Yep.
she's right. It wasn't, doesn't mean it's never going to happen, but it was not today, and I thought that was such a
Yep.
kind, comment.
Right. Because, and true, when you're doing a test and one movement goes horribly bad, and you really mess up, it's one movement. That's the beauty of dressage, Western and English both. You can blow one part of the test. Okay, so what? You have other parts and you have the overall picture. So don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And that's my comment here. What can possibly go wrong? during a dressage test. I was judging. Oh my gosh. Well, maybe you've seen this. I didn't judge this, but I saw it on YouTube. It must have been somebody in, I don't know where they were, Africa. I'm not sure, but she was doing her dressage test, and across the arena in the middle of it was an online test, and across the arena walks a zebra.
Oh
you
my
know,
God.
and I've had, you know, I've had the honor of judging many online tests. And sometimes the things you see, like the cat walks in front of the horse right when it's about to stop at X, and lots of things can go wrong, even at live horse shows, you know that. But don't worry about it. We're all in judges are just like the riders. I mean, we're riders too, and things can go wrong. But the whole goal is to get your horse better trained, whether it be with the help of your trainer and yourself going to horse shows, or maybe you don't have a trainer and you're just looking for feedback, or you're doing some online showing. Um, yeah, just enjoy it and make it better for your horse, so that you and your horse can be better partners with each other. So I think is that our last
Yeah,
slide?
I'm going to stop
Okay.
sharing. I'm just admitting somebody.
Yep.
I'm going to stop sharing. And I
Yep.
think we have a question in the chat.
Okay.
Now we can see the people that are here. So let's
And
see.
you had some questions
Yeah, I do.
before too.
So let
Yeah.
me see what this
Okay.
one is.
Yeah. Feel free, folks, anyone who's listening, to ask whatever.
So Kristen says, I love that on Western, our comments, Western dressage has been the best, comments.
Yeah.
I agree. So
Yeah.
a
Well,
couple people wrote or emailed me about questions they wanted answered. So comments that were on their test.
hmm
And the one was the test was written more like a pattern and didn't understand what that meant.
the test was written more like a pattern. Is that what the comment was?
Yes, that's the comment.
Would it have been referring to a musical freestyle?
Nope, I don't think so.
Oh, I don't understand that comment. I know I saw that one earlier, and I wasn't sure if they were talking about a musical freestyle. Look, sometimes the comment we make about musical freestyles is it's too test-like.
Uh-huh.
And so we want the freestyle to look a little bit more artistic in its choreography, so that it doesn't duplicate a test written to music. So I'm not sure what that comment meant, because the movements do form I mean, there is a pattern. Usually, whatever you do to the left, you do to the right, and so on. So I'm not sure about that one.
Just a minute. All right, so the next one is loops need to be more loopy in a serpentine.
Right. Okay. So what that means is sometimes we see like whether it's a 3-loop serpentine, or if it's a quarter line to quarter line or whatever, or it'll be from the rail to the center line loop. There aren't any straight lines, angled straight diagonal lines in a serpentine. Okay, there is a tiny bit of straightness in a 3-loop serpentine parallel to the short ends of the arena in a large arena, but there's no the lines of a loop. And if you draw it out, and I actually have people do this in our classes, if you draw out your pattern on your serpentine and you do it correctly, it's like that comment said, it's loopy. It's not a straight line. Okay. So and so many times we see straight lines instead of a curved line.
So is it more like half circles?
Yes,
Like there's an
yes,
arc to it?
yes,
Okay.
exactly. Right. Um, especially if it's a 3-loop serpentine. Yeah, it's a half of a 10-meter circle,
Okay.
in a way. I mean, but I always advise, if you're riding serpentines, or if you're even judging serpentines, do some drawing of them so you know where they should fall, where they should be located. Yeah, make your patterns on paper so that you have a kind of a visual image of what they should look like.
So I did get a comment that that first question was not a freestyle. So, but
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
So it said the test was too pattern
To
like?
pat, like more like a pattern.
I don't understand that comment. I mean, I wouldn't make that comment, so I don't know.
Okay.
Um, more like a pattern. I have no idea what that means. Sorry, I can't clarify that. It means, and you know what? Sadly, you will come across sometimes comments that make no sense to you. I'm sad to say. And as a judge, I can't leave the showgrounds until all questions are answered. Okay. So I check in with management before they give me my check and I'm on my way. And I'll say, are there any concerns or comments? Do we have any discrepancies? Is there anything I need to know? And management was, nope, everybody's fine. You can go, that kind of thing. But it's not a bad, oh, maybe like a raining pattern, Bonnie said. That's
Yeah.
possible. It's not a bad idea if you have a question about if I assume that most shows hand out their tests before you leave. I know there are some that don't do that. I've been to some breed shows where that doesn't happen. And it makes me sad because, I spend all that time contributing information and yeah.
Oh, it was an
So
online show.
online show. Okay. Well, I don't think it's a bad idea to ask management to ask the judge to clarify that. Okay. Again, you're paying for it. It's your money. So, if you're at the showgrounds and you haven't left yet, ask management to ask the judge. Or certainly on an online show, if you've received the test back, ask I've had management communicate with me, for an online show. I've even had one time where the management asked me to review a test because the writer had a concern about the way it was scored, and I reviewed it and, worked it out. But yeah.
Yeah. Kristen said maybe it was a comment more. Wait, let me get her comment up again. Maybe in Western equitation patterns is what is the comparison. You can do a pattern with Western dressage moves, but doesn't make it dressage. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Not sure about that one.
Yeah. So the next question is half turn on the forehand, spun around the middle.
Okay. So what that means is, if you picture like, remember when you were a kid and you played spin the bottle
Mhm.
and the bottle spins? That's a turn on the middle. Okay. And that means that the front end and the back end are moving. And in a half turn on the forehand, there's some movement of the front legs, but basically the front legs are staying in the same vicinity and they're not moving around, let's say, to the left while the haunches are going to the right. That would be a turn on the middle with the front end moving left and the hind end moving right. That's a turn on the middle. So it loses the purpose of the movement and makes it easier, and therefore your score is definitely going to be low, not above a 4.
Okay, then the last one is leg yield right, more diagonal like.
Okay, so that comment probably means that the forehand was leading and the horse was basically just going across the diagonal, as opposed to staying parallel to the rail. And the horse is slightly curved away from the direction of movement. Hind legs will be crossing, front legs will be crossing. And so if the horse goes nose first to the rail, then they're going on the diagonal. They're going on a diagonal line to the rail. And horses love to do that. I mean, they're like, hey, I'm going to the rail. I know how to get there. Let me go with my nose first.
So
And
is it
haunches
that
are
you lost
trailing.
the haunches? Is
Yeah,
it
the
you lost the
haunches are
haunches?
trailing. Mm-hmm. Nose
Okay.
first. There's many different ways to say that. Diagonal line, haunches trailing, nose first,
Okay.
no leg yield. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone else has a question, you can unmute yourself and ask
Yeah.
or put it in the chat.
Come on in.
Not.
Okay. So just also a little point of information. So how do people get to be judges? Okay. Um, Getting your judge license is a lot like getting a master's degree. It's equally as expensive, and it takes a long time to get the training required, whether it's English dressage or Western dressage. And I honestly can't say that either one of them is easier than the other. When you graduate through the L program, you're not technically called a judge because you're not licensed with USDF or USEF. So we have a mothership, if you want to call it, and that's the United States Equestrian Federation, USEF. They license judges that are registered, that's a small R, recorded, that's a large R, and on up, S, and so on. In Western dressage, we only have the small R and the large R. We don't have anything bigger than that. Yet, in English dressage, of course, it goes farther up the line because there's international showing and Olympics and so on. But it takes a lot of persistence on anyone's part that's trying to become a judge, because there's many criteria to become a judge. In English dressage, there's a riding criteria component. Western dressage does not yet have a riding criteria component. Remember, Western dressage is a new-ish sport. We've not been, in existence for much more than a decade. So we had to have judges. And so we had, some relaxation in our criteria at the beginning. But now, whether you're already licensed or you're just starting out, the criteria is pretty tough. And so there's a lot of hoops and continued hoops. Even judges who already are licensed, and for example, in Western dressage, have to attend the judge education seminar once every 3 years in Denver. I'm one of the teachers of that. So yeah, you don't get to rest on your laurels. And I know the same is true in English dressage. It's very, very rigorous training. And that's why it's very cool that, we are able to hire judges with licenses, because we know that they have been through and continue to go through training. And they also have, as I said, like a mothership to answer to if there are complaints at a registered or a licensed show about a judge, and those complaints go to the USEF, we are looked into. And so we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to stay trained, and to be able to know what we're doing, and get the education necessary to sit there in that booth and pass judgment.
Okay, I have a couple more questions
yep.
from the chat room.
Yep.
So in the free walk, do you like to see reins really loose? I've heard two different things: no loose reins, or horse needs to have its head down and be on the bit.
Okay, so the horse should have his head relaxed, stretching out, and reaching, looking for, seeking. But even more important than that is that the gaits are free. The gaits are free. The shoulders are reaching. They're active and elastic. That there's fluid changes in and out of the free walk. It isn't abrupt and going into it, or abrupt coming back. So whether or not the length of the rein is somewhat important, but what's really more important is, what is the horse's body doing? Okay, is it stretching to the contact? I want to mention that if you're interested in knowing how we arrive at some of the scores that we give, say on the free walk, for example, we have a cheat sheet that in Western dressage that the judges have created, that the Judge Education Committee has created, and it's on the learning management. I don't know if you've been on the learning management system on the Western dressage website, but there's a guide there that I think is so cool because it's available to everybody. It's called Scoring Guidelines, and every single important movement is in this little pamphlet. And for example, the free walk, if you're going to get an 8 to 10, the gaits have to be free, active and elastic, accurate geometry and balance throughout, fluid changes into and out of, willingness to stretch his neck forward and down with relaxation. Okay, and then it'll tell you how we look at a 7 to a 7.5, a 6 to 6.5, and we do that for every single movement that's in our tests in Western dressage. And honestly, it's not too much different, if at all, from English dressage. So those of you who ride both, you'll find that a very useful tool. So yeah.
Well, I will definitely get that tool.
Yeah,
So
so it's not about rein length. In summary, it's not so much about rein length and they're, loose, long, whatever. I mean, it does say, I think, in the directive, some reference to rein length, but really we're looking at the whole body. The last thing, I'm not looking at reins, although a low score will happen if the rider restricts the horse and doesn't allow it to stretch its neck. If those reins are tight, and the other little pet peeve that most judges have, and I do as well, is if the rider widens the hands, for the free walk and just puts the hands out to the side and says, "Oh yeah, here's my free walk." You haven't lengthened the reins. You've just widened, and that generally restricts the shoulders. So you're shooting yourself in the foot when you widen your hands. It's a dead giveaway to, I don't have a free walk. I can't let my reins go. And the horse says, yeah, I can't move my shoulders either. So, yeah.
So while we're still on the topic of the scoring guidelines, Tracy said, is the scoring guidelines kind of like criteria? Can we look at it that way, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's reflective of the basics, and it's reflective of the criteria for each movement. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the next question is again from Tracy. Every judge is just a bit different. What is one thing that drives you crazy in the ring while you're judging? And Suzanne made a comment saying, well, for her, it's the center line, and I really like flowing
No.
transitions. So what is your thing
Well,
that drives you crazy?
I kind of just mentioned that with the wide hands for the free
Yeah.
walk, but to me, that's cheating. I mean, you're not fooling anybody. And then in Western dressage, we also, at the higher levels, we have a release of the reins, where the rider has to move their hands forward and show that the horse is balanced without rein contact for 3 strides over the center line. And sometimes they'll just like kind of, I don't know, it's real weird the way they like don't release the reins and then they bring them right back. And it's like, no, release the reins. I mean, some of those things are just so easy, but sometimes you can see where they're like, I don't have this in my repertoire, so therefore I'm gonna fake it. And we usually see through that. So, but I don't really have too many pet peeves. I do see that there are a lot of areas where riders quite often throw points away. And it's a big gap in their training. And we see it and comment on it.
Excellent.
Was there another question that popped up there, Mary?
Just a comment from Suzanne. Great job. Lots of good info. Thank you so much.
Oh, good to have you, Suzanne. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Another great judge and rider. Wow. I love the picture of you, Suzanne, at Michigan State, the expo. That was fabulous. Yep. So anyway, I hope you appreciate the effort that all judges make, and I mean, we're all accountable. If you have questions about what we've done, don't wonder about it. Ask management to ask the judge. We're human, and we don't want you to be wondering. We want you to learn something from it. So, especially these online tests, I think that's a fabulous opportunity for writing tests. People may not be able to get to a show, so they can do it online and get some feedback from that. So yeah, very good.
Thank you, Joanne. We got a lot of comments. Excellent. Thanks so much.
Great.
Great job.
Good to
Thank
have
you.
you.
So
Good.
it was great. So if there's no other questions, we will end the meeting. And
All right.
know about your evening. Thank you, Joanne.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fun to be working with you guys. Hope to see